Hi, and welcome to Danny After Dark. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a notification or a new episode. Tonight, as you can see, I have what I would say is a true Canadian treasure back on the channel collabing with me. So, everybody, welcome back, friend of the show, Clay, also known as Fiddleford. Hey, Clay.
How's it going, Danny?
Good. How are you?
Good. Enjoying the sunshine over here at beautiful Vancouver Island.
Oh, it's like a rainstorm here right now. So, of course. So, I'm so happy that you begged and pleaded to come back on to Danny After Dark for another
Oh, you wouldn't believe the hoop she made me jump through to get back on here. Just
yes,
doing
but
backflips.
you know what? I'm giving the people what they want. So, and this is going to be an interesting case to cover with you because this is, to say close to home is actually an understatement with this case.
Very close to home.
Mm-hmm.
It's just down the street.
Which is wild that in talking to you about this case that you knew exactly the locations that things are mentioned. So we have a lot to unpack. So we are going to be covering the case of Stephen Bacon in the murder of Mikayla Chang. So let's go ahead and find out more. Let's go ahead and dive on in. Mikayla Chang, she was your average 16-year-old girl who lived in Nanaimo, British Columbia, Canada. Her grandmother, who she lived with, was her legal guardian. She had short hair that was dyed red and had several face piercings. In the summer of 2016, Stephen Bacon came along and befriended Mikayla. In the months that followed, Stephen and Mikayla developed a relationship similar to that of a father and daughter.
Stephen had told Makayla that his own daughter had committed suicide and that his relationship with Makayla was a second chance. In reality, his daughter was still alive, and that was a complete BS story. In the spring of 2017, Makayla was spending less time at school and more time with Stephen. She was lying to her grandmother about her whereabouts and was staying at Stephen's house. Stephen wanted to adopt Makayla and even contacted both her grandmother and the Ministry of Child and Family Development about that option.
That's so wild that not only does an older man befriend a very young girl, but now she's staying at his home and then he reaches out to her grandmother to adopt her?
Yeah, that's super weird.
What is what is the Ministry of Children and Family Development? What is that in Canada?
They basically deal with like the adoption, relocation of children from troubled homes, that kind of thing. Yeah, just your run-of-the-mill government department.
Okay, I figured, but I just wanted to clarify that for people who don't live in Canada, like myself, who might not be familiar. So, around the beginning of March 2017, Stephen and Makayla began fighting, specifically about her being out late with friends. She also said she did not want to be adopted. March 17th, 2017. In the early morning hours, Makayla was dropped off at Stephen's by a young man that she had recently started to date. March 22nd, 2017. Mikayla Chang was reported missing by Stephen to the RCMP.
Yeah, so that 5 days between the 17th and the 22nd of March, Stephen Bacon was running around with Makayla's phone on social media, sending text messages, pretending to be her to keep people in the dark, basically, about what he had done at this point.
Right.
It's pretty messed up. The following morning, Stephen left Nanaimo by ferry and took the bus and hitchhiked across Canada, got out of town. May 18th, her body was discovered off Nanaimo Lakes Road, it's called. It's a pretty kind of secluded area. An autopsy of Makayla's body discovered small amounts of methamphetamine and fentanyl in her blood, as well as evidence of cannabis. they also found evidence that she'd been having sex. In 2019, police issued a Canada-wide warrant for Stephen, who they called a person of interest. And oh, sorry, that's your part.
Nothing but professionalism here on Danny After Dark.
Absolutely.
I was going to ask you, do you recall when that Canada-wide warrant for Stephen was issued?
I remember hearing about it, I believe, on the radio. And yeah, it was a pretty big deal because if I recall, back at the beginning of the investigation, like 2017, he was actually a person of interest. Sometime before he fled town. And from what I gather I was reading some news articles, they searched his place before he fled town. Obviously didn't find anything there of value,
Right.
But yeah, so he was a person of interest, then fled town, and then he kind of fell off the radar, and then they brought him back as a person of interest later on and finally issued the warrant for his arrest.
Yeah. So in 2020, Stephen was arrested in New Brunswick on unrelated charges before being charged with first-degree murder in Makayla's death. What we learned at that time was on March 17, 2017, so going back, while at Stephen's house, him and Makayla had sex, and he states it was consensual. I just want to say quickly right there, when you have sex with a child, it is not consensual. Just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah.
Just wanted to put that out there, folks. Regardless of what the teenager says, it is not consensual. But I digress. So Stephen and Makayla had begun to fight, and he pushed her. She fell, struck her head, and was knocked unconscious. After waiting 15 minutes, Stephen strangled her to death. He then asked a friend to help him dispose of her body. They drove to a forest in South Nanaimo where Stephen buried her in a shallow grave. Over the next 5 days, as you had mentioned, Stephen pretended to be Makayla using her phone and Facebook account to communicate with friends and family. On March 22nd, 2017, Stephen had reported her missing. The following morning, he had left Nanaimo by ferry and took the bus and hitchhiked across Canada. And then, now we are here, in when he was arrested in 2020.
Stephen was charged with first-degree murder, and he pled not guilty. And then in August 2022, he pled guilty to a lower charge of murder, which basically gave the judge discretion as to whether he would receive parole after between 10 and 25 years, where the first degree charge here, minimum 25 years before you can even look at parole.
Okay.
On that charge, he was sentenced to life in prison, and the judge decided that he wouldn't be eligible for parole for 20 years. The BC Supreme Court Justice, the judge, Robin Baird, when he sentenced Stephen, he told him that, Mr. Bacon, you have committed an appalling crime, a cowardly crime, a vicious crime. You have robbed a 16-year-old child of all of her remaining years of life, and you have cast a permanent pall of sorrow and grief over her family and friends. You have caused serious and enduring damage to this community's sense of safety, peace, and tranquility.
That judge was spot on, and I'm really glad he referred to her as a child, because that's what she was, a 16-year-old child.
Yeah.
Makayla's father, Kerry Chang, said that, quote, his daughter had an unbelievable spirit who was always helping people, and that Stephen was a cold-hearted bastard, and described him as a monster and a pedophile. Makayla's mother, Janine Vantor, said that her daughter's death has, quote, taken a huge toll on our family, end quote.
Stephen did speak briefly in court, admitting that his actions were horrible. He said that he had destroyed so much and that there's nothing that he could do to make it better. As Stephen was led away after the verdict, the courtroom was filled with friends and family of Mikayla Chang, and there was a resounding round of cheers and celebration as he went. So there should be.
As there should be. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is the case of Stephen Bacon and Mikayla Chang, which, what a wild case, and something that, again, is right where you live.
Yeah. Like it's like 5 minutes from my house.
My gosh. What was if you don't mind me asking, Clay, what was the community like when you guys heard that he was arrested and then when he was ultimately convicted? What did your community say?
Like when it first happened, there's a lot of shock. I know the family over that brief period of time held, like there was a lot of vigils and, gatherings and that kind of thing. It was not a good scene. There's a lot of heartache for sure, as you would expect. Yeah. Not good.
Yeah, no, anytime the murder of a child occurs, even a teenager, as the judge states, a 16-year-old child, I have to say, I couldn't find, I know we've been talking about, because this is such a newer case, the limited amount of information that's out there, but I couldn't really find anything as to Stephen's, and I know you can't rationalize irrational thinking and behavior, but why, well, first of all, him having sex with her is completely inappropriate. I think we can just put that out there right away. But then his reasoning of they thought she fell, so then he decided to strangle her. I couldn't understand where he made that thinking that was the next logical step.
Yeah, I have no idea. It's really strange. The only thing I could come up with in my own thinking about it is that he got frightened. Right?
Mm-hmm.
She was hurt. Maybe she wasn't going to wake up. Maybe she was. He got scared.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Authorities would have discovered that she'd recently had sex with him, and maybe he thought yeah, that's a good point. But wow. Well, thank you, Clay, for coming back for another episode of Danny After Dark.
Not a problem, Danny. Happy to be here as always.
It is so much fun when you come on this channel, and viewers, stay tuned. This is not the last that you're going to see of Clay, so keep that in mind. So thank you again, Clay, for joining me for this collaboration, and everybody, until next time, remember, we don't live in darkness. Darkness lives in us. Bye, everyone.